Hey guys, I'm going to explain the second half of your review sheet for your test replacement of 3D. So we are going to start with number 9 and we're converting to standard form. The first thing you need to know is what is standard form. So our standard form is written as ax squared plus bx plus c. And I'm sure you are already aware that I'm not very good at writing with this mouse, so I do apologize if you have some trouble. All right, so in this problem to do standard form, notice standard form does not have any parentheses, and this one does. So in order to change it, all we need to do is multiply. So our first step is going to be to multiply 2 times x and 2 times 3, which would give me a 2x plus 6. And now we're going to multiply it times the second one as well. So our next step would be to multiply this 2 times this x and this 2 times this 4. That's going to give me a 2x squared minus 8. No, I'm sorry. That's going to give me a 2x squared. Sorry. Let's write it. Minus 8x. Negative 8x. And then when I multiply this, I'm getting a positive 6x. And I multiply this one and I get a negative 24. Take a look. Check for any mistakes. We should be good. Now at this point, we will combine like terms. So I'm going to get a 2x squared. These two terms will give me a negative 2x. And this one will bring down as negative 24. And now we have this in standard form. Any questions? That's our answer. All right, moving on to the next one. Number 10, we do the same process. So we'll just multiply it out. So we'll start with red this time. You multiply here and here. Negative times x would give me a negative x. A negative times 6 will give me a negative 6. Give you a chance to catch up. And then we're going to multiply it times the second part. Now when we multiply x times x, that's going to give us a negative x squared. Next, we'll multiply x times negative 5, and that's going to give me a positive 5x. Then we'll multiply 6 times x, which gives me a negative 6x. And 6 times this 5 will give me a positive 30. And then you take a look back just to make sure we're good. And now we're going to combine like terms. What are the like terms? It's a positive 5x and a 6x. So it's going to give me negative x squared minus, because a positive and a negative you subtract, keep the sign of the larger. And then it's plus 30. Any questions there? Hopefully you get it. Okay. So in the intercept form that we need to change it to, first you must understand intercept form is the same thing as saying factored form, which is a hint for us of what we're going to need to do. We're going to need to factor this. All right. And factored form is just the a times x minus p times x minus q. Q and P are our x-intercepts. All right, so factored form. Whenever we are factoring, we always pull out the GCF first. So is there something that will go into all three of these that can be divided by all three, or into all three? So we're going to divide each one of these by 2 and rewrite our equation. So now our equation is going to be a 2 in front for my GCF. And when I divide these out, I get x squared minus 3x minus 4. And now this is where we'll start factoring. We'll factor this part here inside the parentheses, which we'll need. This is our A, this is our B, and this is our C. Some of you will recognize that we could just go ahead and factor because this is a 1. Others of you will want to use your X factor. Whichever way you do it is fine. Sorry, my X is not so straight. All right. Now, at the top of our X factor, we do A times C, which would be positive 1 times negative 4, which gives us a negative 4. On top of our fractions, we do A. So in this case, our A is now 1. Notice it's 1 and not 2. And we do our B at the bottom, and our B is negative 3. Okay, so it might help. Give me a second. It might help if I chose all of these and put it over here so you can see that's where it goes. All right, so now at this point, we are going to find our factors of 4. So our factors of 4 is going to be 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. And in this case, 1 and 4, 2 and 2, I need to find the factors here that will multiply to give me negative 4, but add to give me negative 3. Those factors will be 1 and 4. So it's going to be a positive 1 and a negative 4. Once the fractions are reduced, we use those to make our factored form. So it is reduced, so I'll keep the 2 out front. This x just becomes this 1. It implies that it's going to be a 1x and plus 1 at the bottom. And then on this side, we have a 1x from the top and a minus 4 from the bottom. And now this is in factored form or intercept form. Moving on to the next. So this is the same process, and we would always start with GCF, which it does not have one. So then for those of you who do your X first, then we will do our X. So again, in the top of your X is A times C. So A times C, this is my A, this is my B, and this is my C. So A times C would be 1 times negative 8, which would be negative 8. That's pretty. And for our fractions on top, we do the A, which is 1. And in the bottom of our X is our B, which is 2. Now we're going to factor the 8, which would be 1 and 8, and 2 and 4. Of these factors, we need to multiply to get negative 8, but to add to get a positive 2. So the ones we will choose will be 2 and 4. So in order to get a negative 8, 1 has to be negative. And in order to get this, the 4 has to be positive, and the 2 must be negative. Then I look to see if my fractions are reduced, and since they are, then I don't have an A because there's no GCF. It's like having a 1. Then this fraction will become a 1x from the top and a minus 2 on the bottom. And this one will become a 1x from the top and a plus 4 from the bottom. Then we take a look to make sure we didn't miss any signs, and we say that is our answer. Moving on. Number 13, vertex form. A little different, but not any harder. We will start by recognizing what vertex form is. And the vertex form is when we say A times x minus h squared plus k. In this one, we have an A, a B, and a C, and not an H and a K. So we must find the H and the K. So for our A, it's the same. It's just going to be -1. For our B, we'll have to, sorry, not B. Let's erase that. For our B, I keep saying B. Let's erase it one more time. H. Start all over. That's how we're going to do that. So for an A, we've got to find A. We've got to find H. And we have to find K. There we go. Our A is going to be -1. It won't change. But our H is not our B, so we must find it using the B term. So our H in this case is going to be -B divided by 2A. And so for that, we'll plug in B, which would be negative. I use parentheses anytime I sub, so I don't lose signs. Divided by 2 times our A, which is -1. You would then use your calculators or your brain. You'll get -8 divided by -2, which is +4. Any questions in my head? Let me check, make sure. All right, take your time. Now we're going to K. So let's find K. For our K, we're going to use this formula here because K is like Y and f of x is Y. So we're going to plug into the -x² plus 8x plus 10. All right, so I'm going to say parentheses. Again, I use my parentheses. For the x, we're going to substitute in the 4 that we just found. So it becomes 4 squared. For the second x, I'm still going to plug in that 4, and I put it in parentheses. Remember, every time I sub, I plug in, I use parentheses, and plus 10. Okay? So at this point, you would work this out on your calculator, and you come out with 26. So now that we have our 4 for H and our 26 for K, and we can write our equation. Our equation is now going to be A, which is -1. You can put a 1 or just a negative. Parentheses x minus our H, which is still a +4. So it doesn't change, squared plus 26. Hopefully I didn't confuse you too bad. There we go. Now let's go to 14. 14, we're going to do the same method. We're going to need to find out, oops, forgot to change it. We're going to need to find our A, H, and K. We're going to need to find our A, our H, and our K for our vertex formula. A will never change. It's still going to be 2. This is still our A and our B and our C. Okay, so we find our H using the same formula as the other problem, which would be -B over 2A, which is going to equal -B, B is -6, over 2A, A is 2, and this time, when we finish, we get a decimal. And that is okay. Don't be scared of the decimals. All right, so that's 1.5. And now we're going to find our K. Our K, we use the formula that was given for Y, which would be 2x squared minus 6x minus 3. And now we sub in for our x. In this case, our x is 1.5 squared minus 6 times 1.5 minus 3. Then we use our calculators